This is the Last Minute Blues Podcast with Donnie Fandango, Jeff Burton, Alex Ferrario, and former Blues defenseman Jamie Rivers.
It is the Last Minute Blues Podcast. Donnie Fandango joined in studio by Jeremy Rutherford and Alex Ferrario. You know, gentlemen, normally we kind of dance around things before we jump right into it.
Pleasantries.
But I'm just going to get right into it. I was so excited about the game last night.
Saw your tweet.
But also, in the same breath, I was completely ready in the back of my mind for them to lose last night.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought that they wouldn't get housed. I thought it would be a game, which it was. But to me, that game was just like everything that we've seen throughout the course of the season, man. You have hope there for a minute. You really think it's going to happen. There's times where the Blues are just freaking bringing it, and you're like, dear Lord, baby Jesus, this is it. There they are. You have Bennington saving their ass again. It's legitimately, but at the time when you needed the things to click the most, when you had a goaltender on the other team that's not great. He's not great. Mm-mm. He looked very skittish back there. And the Blues, I feel like, didn't really test him all that much. It just felt like when that game was over, I went, yep. That pretty much, it's that feeling that we've had all year. Like, I can't hate them. They're not terrible, but they're freaking not great either. And they sure seem to pick and choose when they want to freaking pull it out. And it drives me freaking crazy.
I could feel Donnie's
Donnie's
night
come
out.
up firing.
Yeah, and situation two, there's always sequences in hockey that, it's just amazing how they happen. So the sequence is a penalty shot in overtime.
I know.
You're going to win the game in overtime on a penalty shot, and you're going to get the 2 points on Vegas. Nope, it's in the other end. It's in the back of the net.
Missed the penalty shot.
How does that?
Off of a glove save that the goalie, for some reason, did this jump when he saved it and fell backwards. And then the next play, you lose the face-off. You never touch the puck again. I understand where Donnie's coming from because, look, I not to paint myself jaded, but, man, this last stretch where they've won 6 of 7, every game I was kind of waiting for what Donnie was talking about. It's that Ottawa Senators game. I'm thinking, all right, this is it. This is where they have that hope. They have us ready to go, and then they just drop it on us nope, not going to happen. But they played well. I got to give them credit. And then you come back home and on the road against Minnesota, you play well. That Vegas game, man, I was expecting more in the first period, and credit to Vegas because Vegas did an awesome job. I mean, they closed plays down like that.
It was a clinic, dude.
It was. They're big, they're fast, and the moment you think you've got space, they're collapsing on top of you. I mean, that's what a Stanley Cup champion looks like.
We saw that with Colorado.
Absolutely. They suffocate you on the puck. In the first period, it felt like the Blues could never gain their legs, their momentum, because they were trying the rush style of hockey. They were trying the outlet passes from their own zone and to get in and beat the goaltender, and they had a couple of chances. But, man, Vegas knew exactly what they were ready to do. Second period was a lot like the second periods we've seen from the Blues, to where it was just nothing there. You had 5 shots on goal. I think you ended that period with 7 shot attempts. But then, like Donnie mentioned, there's always going to be one period, and the Blues, if I were to describe this season into one sentence, it would be goaltender keeps you in the game until the Blues find their legs. Third period was, hey, we're down by 1, throw everything at them. And they did, and they looked good. But at that time, your goaltender on the other side was already hot enough to make the saves, and you couldn't find ways to break through.
Well, and I also still think, though, man, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I still feel like you can be making more noise in front of this opposing goaltender.
Oh, yeah.
You could still make his life a little bit more miserable. I still feel like shot selection was a lot of stuff that was kind of out front and out on the perimeters and stuff. And, again, you're not dealing with a goddamn Vezina winner back there, man. Why don't we friggin' throw some stuff at him and see what the hell he can do? And I'm not saying he played a bad game, and I'm not even really overall saying that the Blues played a bad game. I just think I got what it is.
You think you were expecting more in a playoff atmosphere like that, like a do-or-die situation? Because I felt like I was looking for more in that game. And you're right. I didn't feel like there was a whole lot of net front presence by the Blues until that third period. You started to see bodies going towards the net. But in the first 2 periods, now, granted, you do have to give credit to a team that has every defenseman at 6'3" or taller. So, like, that's part of the reason why Vegas does so good about not letting guys to the front of the net. But, I mean, that Vegas team was a team that prior to their two-game win streak where they beat Seattle and Columbus, they had lost 7 of 8. And so it was like, man, that felt like a depleted team that didn't have Alex Pietrangelo, Alec Martinez, Mark Stone, Tomas Hertl, Aiden Hill. Like, having those 5 guys out, you got to be thinking, okay, this is the opportunity right in front of you.
Guys, honestly, did it look like those friggin' 5 guys weren't playing last night?
Can you imagine when they get these guys
I know.
back?
Seriously, what those guys are going to look like when they get back.
No, that's what they've built in Vegas. They've got a great team. And even though people look and say, how is Vegas in the wild card spot? Well, they've had a lot of injuries.
Yeah.
And to some key guys. So they'll get a couple back, if not everybody back, by the time the playoffs roll around. But Donnie, Alex, that's a playoff team. That's
Absolutely.
They're going to make it. That's what a playoff team looks like. Colorado looks like amazing.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about killing plays and closing things, that's what those good teams do. And hey, let's touch on this 11-7 thing if you got to.
Yeah. Please.
So just want to touch on that because I think a lot of people look at those first 2 periods and they say 12 shots on goal at even strength first 2 periods. Are you kidding me? This is a game that you have to win, and you weren't able to roll the 4 lines. People were saying because only having the 11 forwards at the start and then you lose.
Which is the main reason, by the way, you won 6 of 7 games was rolling 4 lines.
Yeah, and so I totally understand the rolling of the 4 lines and what having 12 forwards out there does for you. If you're the coaching staff, you're Drew Bannister, obviously you can't predict that you're going to have an injury to Saad early on. You can't predict that Shen's going to be in the box for 7 minutes. You can prepare yourself for those things to happen. But here's my thing, and I pushed Braden Shen on this last night. I said that start that you had, obviously, you were a little bit shorthanded, but it needed to be better, right? I don't want this 11-7 thing to be an excuse for the way the Blues played in the first 2 periods. I think it's fair to second guess the decision a little bit. That's fine, but I don't think that's why the Blues lost the game last night. Yes, you didn't have a couple forwards that you needed at times during the game. Yes, you look at Scandella and Perunovich, and they only played 5-6 minutes each. But if you're telling me that the 11-7 cost the Blues last night, you're telling me that Zach Bolduc was going to come in and score a goal or 2 in the 7 minutes that he was going to play, or Sammy Blais was going to come in and do it. That's what you're saying.
I'm glad you said that too, because I mentioned this on postgame, because at the end of the game, you sit back and you think about it and you say, yeah, you were playing with 10 forwards and 7 defensemen, but essentially 10 forwards and 4 defensemen. But if you're honest with yourself, the Blues, in all of these games that they've been playing, in the third period, they've been playing with 10 forwards and 4 defensemen. Like, the third pairing has not been playing much, and they've maybe been rotating in one guy from the fourth line late in games. Zachary Bolduc, Zach Dean, Nathan Walker, in this last stretch of games, they haven't been playing in the third period. Maybe 3 or 4 shifts, but it hasn't been anything where it's been like, oh, wow, you're impacting the game. They're sitting on the bench. And that game last night, you had 3 lines that you were rolling out there, and that would have been the 3 lines, in my opinion, that Drew Bannister was going to be rolling out there any time of the week. The matter of the fact is, your best players weren't your best players last night. I mean, Jack Eichel was everywhere. Like, Jack Eichel was so good last night. Barbashev was hitting everything. Marchessault. And you go through the list. I mean, you had 1 shot on goal from Robert Thomas. You had 1 shot on goal from Jordan Kyrou. The only guys that had more than 2 shots on goal were Alexei Toropchenko, Torey Krug, and Pavel Buchnevich. And not to say that they were awful in that game, because, I mean, especially Thomas, Neighbors, and Shen, they had a pretty massive task of finding a way to eliminate Jack Eichel, and they did that in regulation, but still, that was the type of game you look at and you say, our best players got to take over the game. And it got to the point where Bannister realized the line combinations weren't working, and so he broke it up again, which I'm not going to complain. I've been asking for Buchnevich, Thomas, and Neighbors to play together, but you did that, which means you took away what Jordan Kyrou had been accomplishing in those last 2 games with Pavel Buchnevich. If your best players aren't able to step up to that level, then that's what happens. The other team takes over.
This Blues team psyche seems very fragile to me.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like it does not take much to knock them off, and it takes a lot for them to start believing in themselves again. But you see it. You saw it a little bit in the third when they were feeling it last night, and I just don't understand where the hell it goes. Like, I don't.
Flies away.
I do. I don't get it.
Yeah.
It is obvious to me that the makeup of what's going on with these guys is not where it needs to be. And here's a big thing, and we can talk about this, and we got plenty of time to talk about it in the season. We got a lot of things to talk about today. But if you're going to be bringing back next year pretty much this same squad, I'm wondering if that's going to be an issue as far as selling tickets and getting people excited for the season. Because even if you have Jimmy Snuggerud, and I can't wait to see him, but like, is he going to come in and make a splash? No, probably not. It takes him a while to get acclimated. Mm-hmm. So what's going to happen that's going to make us feel friggin' good about next year?
I just can't see, Alex and Donnie, I can't see Doug Armstrong bringing back
the same roster,
the bulk of the group. Like I think that a lot of them are going to be back just because you're not going to be able to unload 6, 7 guys. But I think that he's going to make a big move or two to alter the look of this team. And
he's got
to. And everybody looks at the situation, realizes what they're going to be in for the next couple of years. So I don't think it's going to be a surprise, whether this team doesn't make the playoffs again next year, potentially. But you have to come back with a different look. Now, the key here is going to be, how do you unload a couple of these guys, especially the veterans with the contracts? We've been talking about that for 2 years. Yeah. Doug Armstrong, after loading up on these assets at the trade deadline last year, what he got for O'Reilly, Tarasenko, and then some of these young players that he's got, you're not giving up these guys to help facilitate a trade of Torey Krug or Justin Falk or one of these guys. You can't afford to do that. So you might have to take one for the team somehow and go the extra mile to make these moves happen, but you just can't do it at the expense of multiple assets. So I just think, we say this every year, it seems like, Alex, that it's going to be such an interesting offseason.
I know. Yeah.
But in the past, it was like they had a good team, could be better next year. Who could they sign? Who could they trade for? This is going to be intriguing from the other way. It's, okay, we've seen this. It doesn't work. How can they change it?
Okay, I'm going to throw this out there. And this is a complete 180 from where I was at the beginning of the season. I am completely okay with being wrong. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
Neither do we.
Torey Krug has got to stay.
Yeah.
He is absolutely friggin' got to stay.
Yeah.
If there was one guy last night that I felt like was engaged and was ready for that son of a bitchin' game, it was friggin' that guy. I mean, not only him, but just what he has done over the course of these last couple of months. And me, I guess, finally smarting up or wising up and seeing it. But it just that guy's got to be here. He's got to.
I'm just laughing because when he said, I did a 180 on this, it reminds me of the old Mike Shannon. Mike Shannon used to say, I've done a 360 on this one. Okay, you're back in the same spot.
You went in a full circle and you're right back here.
Circle. I've done a 360 on this one.
Give Donnie time. He might do another 180 and he'll be right back where we started.
Give me the opportunity, all right?
No, I mean, look, at the beginning of the season, we talked about this on our show, and, I asked the question, can Torey Krug do anything to endear himself to Blues fans? And I think at the time, we all said no, because it felt like Blues fans were set in their ways of saying, like, no, he's not the point scorer. He's $6.5 million. He's not good defensively. What are you going to do? I do think he's endeared himself this season. And look, his plus minus isn't pretty. If you look at it, what is he, like a minus 27 or something? It's not pretty at all. His points aren't anywhere near where I think people expected him to be, specifically on the power play. But Torey Krug has fully endeared himself, because I'm on the same page as Donnie, because he shows the fight. And I'm not sure there's a lot of guys like, look, Braden Shen once again last night. Saad gets hit in the corner, thinks it's a bad hit, and jumps on the guy and starts throwing punches. There's been 2 guys this season that I think have done that, and it's been Braden Shen and Jake Neighbors. Torey Krug might not be dropping the gloves, but Torey Krug is taking extra cross checks. He's pulling guys' helmets off after they smack their goaltender, and I can look on that team, and I don't know if I've seen another player do that for this Blues squad. So I don't know what it is about Torey Krug. People might not believe me and say, like, he's been bad defensively, you got to get rid of him. Man, I'll take a guy who's bad defensively but has that fight on my team any day of the week, because I think you at least have somebody. Jerry, you talked about at the beginning of the season, how is this team going to show that they're on the same page, it's fighting for each other? At least Torey Krug has shown the ability to do that for this squad.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How about Shen fighting McNabb? And
I know.
After the game, he says, we work out.
Yeah, we're buddies from Saskatchewan.
We're buddies. I couldn't imagine, like, Alex and I get in a fight, and I go, I do a pod with him.
Right.
Like,
that would be a fight. I'd lose. I'd go in the fetal position, be like, no, no, please.
Yeah, Kelly McCrimmon, the Vegas GM, he came out to press box during the intermission and said, 2 good Sasky boys there getting after it. But
seriously.
But no, I agree with you, Alex, in terms of the fight. I think Torey Krug is a guy who cares, and he brings what he has every night, most nights, type of player. I think, Donnie, I don't disagree with you that, Torey Krug is a guy who you could bring back. I think a lot of Blues fans would probably disagree, but I think it's in part because they want
the
change.
Money gone.
They want change, and then also they want to be bigger. And you look at the teams that are successful right now. We looked at Colorado. What did Braden Shen? He goes, oh my God, it seemed like everybody was 6'3" and 220 pounds. What did they say last night about Vegas? And so that's not an indictment on Torey Krug. I just think that if he comes back, okay. But I think that most people want to see some change on that back end.
Right.
And he's one of the few guys that you
got 4 guys that are
might be able to move.
6 foot or smaller, I think, with Falk, Letty, Krug, and Scott Perunovich. So, I mean, that's a lot of tiny dudes.
Yeah, and you talked about, is it Krug or is it Perunovich? It's going to be one or the other. They play the same game. You can't play them in the same top 6. Well, guess what? I don't know that you're going to have either one of them next year.
Yeah.
It looks like you're going to have Perunovich from a contract standpoint because they're going to get him the games.
But do you stick with it?
But, yeah, do you stick with it?
Well, and then you look at the system, too. I mean, they've got this Michael Buchinger kid who's playing in the juniors. He's a 6-foot defenseman, I think. He's mobile. This Theo Lindstein that they just signed to an entry-level contract, he's 6 foot. So it's not like they have a lot of big dudes in their system that project to be higher defensemen. So right now you're talking about Colton Parayko, Matt Kessel, who's 6'1", I think. And then after that, you got the smaller stature defenseman.
Guys, I maybe I'm reading this incorrectly, but the Scott Perunovich has always been kind of viewed upon in my eyes of, hey, he's going to be here for a minute. But you guys both kind of maybe him and Han a little bit. I mean, what do you think? Do you think that maybe he could potentially be a trade chip if they re-signed him in the offseason? Do you why is this? I mean, because we know we see the offense. Is it too many defensive zone laps? What's going on?
Yeah, I think like last night, case in point, and I
that
like
first goal.
That first goal was
baby.
rough.
I like Scott Perunovich, and for a couple years now, I've felt that he can be successful. But the one thing that when you kind of analyze the situation that you kind of don't take into account is all the games that he's missed. So you see him there, you see him on the ice, you see the potential, you see all that stuff, but in your mind you're not looking at, oh my gosh, he's missed 145 potential games and what that does to a player. Mm-hmm. And so when he's trying to come into the NHL and establish himself as a undersized guy who isn't necessarily physical and in a league where we're looking at a bunch of 6'3" defensemen, how can he get to that level? Well, the only way is by playing a lot of games. And, they didn't have him in there at the start. Then they put him in there, and then you start to see some of those defensive warts. And, last night's mistake, wasn't the only mistake that he has made in the back end. That's not to single him out. But, Drew Bannister said, can't go out to the wall there. You got to hold your ice and let that play happen out in front of you. And instead of doing that, and that was a costly mistake last night. Armstrong sees it, Bannister sees it, everybody sees it. That goes into their thinking when they're talking about who they're going to bring back, for their 6 or 7 next year. So, I think it looks like Perunovich, contract-wise, they're going to be able to hang on to him as an asset. I don't think that he has much trade value.
I'm with you.
And so basically, I see him coming back as a 6 or 7 guy.
Well, and the other part.
Buckle up and hang on. This is going to be a good one.
The fans of Kansas Speedway know how to have a good time. One that celebrates fantastic finishes and family-friendly facilities. Trading paint.
We got feuding
and tailgating tradition. Burnouts, beer, and barbecue. Oh, it'll for sure be a good time, and you are all invited. NASCAR weekend at Kansas Speedway, May 4th and 5th. Get your tickets now at kansasspeedway.com.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Allstate wants to remind fans that mayhem is everywhere, like at your pregame barbecue. While you prep your meats, that grease trap you forgot to empty is prepping to smoke your porch, garage, and the car inside. And without the right home and auto insurance coverage, the cost to repair this could eat up your savings. So bundle home and auto with Allstate to save and get protected from mayhem like this. Bundled savings vary and are not available in every state. Coverage is subject to policy terms and conditions.
After countless steps and more than a few miles, your dog drives you forward one last time to make that final climb. And as the rising sun peeks out from the horizon, you know, incredible happens here because it starts here. With the fuel that makes it all possible. Pro Plan Sport. Discover advanced nutrition made to fuel strength and stamina in active dogs like yours at ProPlansport.com.
Two is it just seems like he doesn't want to shoot the puck. And Bannister has said multiple times, we need him to shoot, we need him to shoot, we need him to shoot. And if you're an offensive defenseman, you got to start shooting the puck in those scenarios. The other thing, and the part for me where it kind of felt like the writing was on the wall, was the roster decision last night. Like, you didn't want to play a Bolduc and a Dean, which I get, but you also had a Sammy Blais that at least profiles as somebody that could play in that game, a big physical guy who hits things, but instead you wanted to play an extra defenseman, and it was very telling. Now, I know Marco Scandella didn't have much ice time either, but they had Marco Scandella out there with Scott Perunovich as the seventh defenseman. Scandella took a majority of those shifts with Justin Falk, and Scott Perunovich would rotate in every now and then. It just felt like, and again, I could be completely off here, it just felt like, okay, we need to play Perunovich because we got to get those games so that we can hit the restricted free agent status. So let's make sure he's in there, but let's get somebody also in the lineup like a Marco Scandella.
Who can handle the back end.
And he's not playing the second power play unit. Justin Falk was playing that second power play unit. It just feels like that's now two coaches that have looked at it and said, well, if he's not going to really provide us. And look, Bannister is somebody that has talked glowingly about Perunovich. Like when he was in the minors, I guess it was last year or 2 years ago, Bannister has said he was the best American Hockey League player that he had seen that season. So you know it's there. And I hate to say this for Blues fans, if it does go the way where Perunovich isn't a Blue, I'm sure you might see him have success elsewhere. But for right now, it just feels like it's not clicking with St. Louis. All right. See,
this is all goddamn bad news. I was on the way here this morning, man. I'm listening to songs. I'm in a real great mood. I'm thinking to myself, well, we're going to have a great chat today.
And then Alex walked in.
And then as we're hearing this, I'm like, crap. Okay, a couple things. First of all, I was so unbelievably surprised to see Brandon Saad come back in that game last night.
I was too.
I thought he was done. That was really scary. I understand that that's not an illegal hit, but after that happened, I wanted that dude to get murdered. I hated every bit of it. But man, the stones on that guy to friggin' come back. And then what happened with Sonny? I heard he left last night in crutches and with a brace on his knee or something like that.
Yeah, he took a hit in the corner and just went down awkwardly. It was his right leg for sure. You know, was it his knee? You know, ankle. Yeah. He did have the brace on. You know, the knee. You know, I don't know precaution or that's exactly where the injury's at, but I would be surprised if he's back this year. I mean, it definitely. They said we'll find out more. I think tomorrow. Blues are off today, Donnie. So we'll find out. But he's had ACL injury,
and it was his right leg in the past, right, where he had it. Yeah, that was the part that stung.
But if it made you feel any better, that Brayden Schenn backhanded pass to the center went right past McNabb.
That's true.
The guy who laid
McNabb watched it.
So. That was a freaking great pass. Holy Toledo. How do you do that? Like that, I mean,
close your eyes and hope it makes its way through.
That's how I would do it. But I mean, like, I'm telling you, and I'm not going to make this a thing, but just, it is moments like that in games, which is why I love sports. Mm-hmm. The ability to execute that play at that time, son of a bitch.
Yeah.
It was just incredible,
man.
Looked
like me at the parent-kid game.
That's true. Eli did tell me, he goes, my dad is just incredible out there. He's like Wayne Gretzky 2.0.
My nickname's the Glacier.
It's iceberg straight ahead.
So, guys, really, I mean, barring some form of minor miracle.
I knew we were going to get here.
This isn't happening, right?
So I was doing the math last night, and I mean, we all know how this goes. I mean, you have 80 points, and you've got one game more played than Vegas. You've got 10 games left to go. They've got 85 points, and they've got 11 games to go. The most you can get to is 100 points, and that's you winning out. You winning 10 in a row, that's putting you at 100 points. That means Vegas would need to get 16 points in their last 11 games to just knock you out of the playoffs, just eliminate you from the playoffs. And let's go the bare minimum here, where with 11 games, they go 5-6. That's 10 points. That puts them at 95. That means you've got to get 15 points in the final 10 games, which is doable, but here's the part for it. You've got to win 7 and lose a couple in overtime, 6 and lose a couple in overtime, win 8. To do that, that means you have 2 mulligans. And that means you have 2 mulligans against, of course, all of those cupcake teams, the Calgarys, the San Joses, the Anaheims. But that also means you play 4 games against Edmonton, Nashville, Carolina, Dallas. If you drop 2 of those in that 4-game stretch, you can't lose anymore. And that's hoping that Vegas only wins 5 games. And they got a tough schedule. I'll give them that. I know everybody's talking about the gauntlet of a schedule that they have. But they also play 6 games at home, and they're like the 3rd best team in the National Hockey League on home ice. They do play Chicago, Anaheim, Arizona, Minnesota twice. They are going to get healthier. I mean, if it's not impossible, but man, it's as close to impossible as you can think it's going to be.
Donnie, I always, when I talk about writing and I compare jobs, you always think, let's talk about Taco Bell for 1 second. When you go to the drive-thru and you order Taco Bell, you know what you're going to get,
Chalupa.
right? The worker, there's only one way to make the order. They make the order, you get your order, you get exactly what you
And
want.
if there's chicken on it, I'm sending it back.
When you write something, it is up to interpretation for whoever is reading it. So it might not be the same to everybody, right? Like that Taco Bell order. So last night, I just want to tell you, as I'm writing the story and I'm thinking to myself, they're done, right? Like this, they're done. Like, how can I construct this sentence where people will understand it and interpret it all exactly the same way? I think I broke the backspace on my typewriter last night. I was like, no, people won't interpret
That's why I walked past you and you had this dead look on your face staring into space like,
yeah,
are they done?
And you write it in a way where like, okay, they would have to go on a major run and 2 other clubs or one other would have to completely crumble. So, yeah.
That's the other part too. Like, we're just talking Vegas in that scenario. You also have to bring in the LA Kings into the conversation. If Vegas goes on a run, LA could fall off. You do have to bring in the Minnesota Wild. Minnesota plays Vegas twice. So if they pick up all of those points and you struggle, well, now Minnesota's jumped you and put themselves in a position where they're competing with it. So, I mean, you're not worried about, I mean, obviously you're worried about yourself. If you go 10-0, then you've done everything you need possible, but you're not worrying just about one team right now. You're still worrying about 3 teams with the Kings, the Golden Knights, and the Minnesota Wild.
All right, I got a few random things here that I want to pepper at you guys.
Yes.
So I saw the other day that Adam Gaudette leads the AHL
37 goals
in goals.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. I don't know the best way to ask this question, so I'm just going to ask it this way, and then we'll figure it out. What does that mean? Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, like that's a great number.
I'll put this into perspective. Josh Levo, the year that the Blues signed him in the offseason, led the American Hockey League in goals scored. I think he had 35, 40, something like that. Martin Ferk, a member of the Ferrario 5, JR will always remember, when he signed the year prior in the American Hockey League, I think he also had 40 goals scored in the American Hockey League. So
I just think it means you're really good at the American Hockey League level, and when you come up,
there's just a different level.
And you might be okay. And but every year there's going to be a guy like that, and you're going to have fans clamoring to play him.
Yeah.
Put him in the top 6. Okay, well, there's a reason why he's in the American Hockey League and not in the top 6.
And Joey always talks about the AHL too, and you've heard this, JR. Like, the AHL is just chaos. The NHL is a lot more controlled. It's kind of like jazz in terms of, you know what everybody's doing, you're on the same page. It's all constructed perfectly for you to finish the scoring opportunity. The AHL is just controlled chaos, where it's like you find an opening, you take a shot, you get a breakaway, you take an advantage of it. Like, not that those guys aren't talented, it's a different element of hockey in terms of you're the top line forward, you're the top line winger, and it is just pure chaos on the ice. You find your opening, you take advantage of it.
And the reason that this is proof positive, what we're saying is absolutely 100% correct, is because there is no way a goalie like Jordan Binnington could just rise from nowhere. You play in the ECHL, AHL, get loaned, come up, win it. There's no way. So this is foolproof.
How can a guy move from one AHL team to another when they don't even want him, threaten to send to the ECHL and say, well, this guy can't play in the NHL?
It's just fascinating to me. And also, too, in all of the conversations that we've had about next year and the year after, none of us have mentioned that guy's name going forward as being excited about next year or any of those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And so that in and of itself, I feel like
the
is
hard
very
part
telling.
is when you bring anybody up from the AHL, unless they're a top prospect, when they come up, it's the 3rd or the 4th line. Like, there's not trust in that player to, like, throw him into a top 6 role and play on the power play and the penalty kill and all of those scenarios. You come up and you're on the 3rd or the 4th line, and you have to make good with whatever opportunities you get and show that you can score to get more opportunities. And if you don't show it, well, then you're going to be stuck there. You're going to lose your ice time. If it's a tight game, you're not going to see the ice very much. Like, it is just a different brand of hockey at the NHL versus that AHL level.
If the Blues really do fall out of this to a point where they say, hey, we're not going to make the playoffs, do you see the nightly lineups being a little different? Do you see, does a Bolduc get a little bit more playing time? Do you see Dean a little bit? I mean, do you see any of those kinds of things?
I mean, I think Dean and Bolduc are going to be playing from now on, especially with the Sonny injury. I mean, Dean's going to fill into that spot, and my guess is Bolduc goes back in. You don't do the 11-7 anymore. So, I mean, my guess is those two are in there. The question is with Snuggerud, what happens? And I think he plays Thursday against Omaha with the University of Minnesota. So, I mean, that could be Friday he could be out, or we could be talking 4 weeks from now and he's not playing with the team at all. But, I mean, I think Bolduc and Dean are going to be in the lineup pretty much from now until the end of the season consistently. I could be wrong. And the other guys you're talking about are Alexandrov and Blais. And, I mean, who are you going to take out of the lineup, I guess, is the question you ask.
Yeah, and with regard to Snuggerud, I've been in discussion with his agent, and it's a situation where I guess you can't say agent when it's a college kid. It's a family advisor. Family advisor.
That's what they're called.
Yeah.
Wink, wink.
and so he's going to play Thursday night. No decision made at this point. Obviously, they're not going to tell you the straight goods. It could be a situation where he pretty much knows what he wants to do, but obviously got a big game on Thursday night with the Minnesota Golden Gophers. But let's say they lose that, or they advance to Saturday's round, lose Saturday. There are going to be discussions soon, is the bottom line, between the Blues and Jimmy Snuggerud in terms of what he wants to do this year. And we've said it, but we'll say it again just to remind people, if he plays in one game with the Blues, he's burning 1 year of a 3-year entry-level contract. And you say, okay, what does that mean? Well, how does that impact the Blues? Well, they in hockey, they have a set salary for the first 3 years of the contract, and it's, $900-something thousand. And so if you have 3 years of that, you're getting Jimmy Snuggerud for $900,000 3 years. If that doesn't start this year, that means it starts next year. You got the next 3 years. But if he plays one game, you burn one of those 3 years. That means he's got 2 more years left on that deal. And let's say he comes in those 2 years and he lights it up. He's 40 goals. Well, guess what? That third year, he's making
you're talking
6,
somewhere
7,
between
8,
$4 to $8 million.
Guys, there is literally nothing that you could say that's going to tell me that makes any sense whatsoever to bring him up for any length of time.
Especially if you're not you're in a playoff race, but if you're not in a playoff race. Wouldn't you rather if you're the Blue, and I'm posing this question to you guys. You're in a playoff race, but it mathematically looks tough. Wouldn't you much rather either say, hey, we want you to come over, we want you to turn pro, but we want you to go play for the Springfield Thunderbirds in their playoff race. And they're really far out of it, too. I think they're in 6th or 7th place in their division. Wouldn't you rather look at it and say, we just want you to be healthy next year at camp, so focus on yourself this offseason. We'll sign the contract, but we're going to focus on you playing games next year. Can you bring him with the team, sign him to an entry level, have him be around the team the rest of the season, but not play? That doesn't burn a year of his contract, correct?
Yeah, I'd have to look at the particular whether you get on the ice or not.
If you're on the roster.
Yeah, I guess it's playing a game, so I should know this. But, I think that if you're signing the contract, you're probably talking about playing. I can't.
So you wouldn't sign it and by the end of the season and come up here and be with them.
And then the other option, Donnie, we've talked about this before. I don't know that the Blues would be interested in this, but you can not sign the 3-year entry-level contract, not burn that first year by playing in a game. And you can sign what they call a professional tryout, and you'll go down to Springfield, play a few games. We've used the example before, but that's what David Backes did. When he came out of college, didn't come to the Blues, went to Peoria, was it?
I think it was Peoria.
And played 7-8 games down the stretch, got his feet wet, and then he came to camp with the full 3 years left on the contract.
I just wonder how valuable those 7-8 games or whatever would be for the kid, because, you would have to think that next year – turning pro is going to be the longest hockey year that he's probably ever had, right?
It will be, yeah.
So, man, get home, Get those pillows ready. Let's get yourself rested. Let's get the health thing going on. Make sure you're eating what you need to eat, and let's be ready for next year.
You've
That's
done
what
a
I
360 on this topic.
Yeah, you did a full 360 on us, Donnie.
All right, I got to
Look at
mention
you.
a couple things here real quick. Congratulations to Nick Leddy
Yeah.
on 1,000 games in the NHL. That's friggin' unbelievable. And also our dude, TJ Oshie, with 1,000 games in the NHL as well. I love that guy. I miss him, and will always root for that guy. And I had one more goddamn thing that I wrote down on my sheet that now I don't see what it is. So I don't know. It went right out of my head.
Let's guess what it is.
Sorry, guys.
Let's guess.
I don't
know what
because we've covered pretty much like everything that I have wanted to cover. I wanted to say that it was like an NHL, like sort of broader NHL topic.
And no, the rule changes, I don't think any of the rule changes are very interesting.
No.
It's probably your thought of the Blues should have pulled the goaltender last night in regulation to try and win that game.
I mean, it seems that way, right?
Well, my stupid co-host BK said that it was a good idea, and I think it's a terrible idea.
I think we're going to talk about that.
But you need to get the point, though.
You do need to get the point, but man, what does that look like if they score a goal in the empty net on the other side and you lose 0 points? Now your season's officially over.
Yeah.
Like, not mathematically, it's like we're out of this one. And we talked about this on postgame. Like, you have to have the biggest cojones as a head coach to do that. You better be like, I'm never getting fired. You better be Nick Saban secure in your job if you're going to do that in a playoff race. And if you're freaking Drew Bannister on an interim head coach, you think he's going to pull the goaltender when Doug Armstrong's sitting up in that press box and lose in regulation and be like, this was a good idea at the time?
I guess you're
like,
right.
No. Plus, you were so awesome in overtime. You're in your mind, you're winning in overtime.
So that seems like an idea that I should have, not BK.
You did a 360 on that one.
What I can't wait for is later on when he's driving home and he goes, I know what it was. God dang it, I should have asked him.
He'll text us, but I'll have it for Friday.
It wouldn't have been like anything like massive or anything. I mean, I think more than anything else, I've been kind of watching a little bit more games here and there. I really think I like Carolina a lot.
Oh, dude, Carolina's so good. They're my pick in the Eastern Conference this year.
And also, and I love the. I don't know, just the way that I am, but I love the side of isn't it Kuznetsov having the issues, needing the change, and getting the change, and really seeming like it's invigorating him in a great way.
Great story.
Like, that's really a wonderfully great
If there was
thing.
a team he could have gotten traded to where you knew it was going to work out, it would have been Carolina with Rod Brind'Amour. Like, plus his former teammate and best friend Dmitry Orlov is playing for the Carolina Hurricanes. You got good leadership there. I mean, that was a perfect situation for Kuznetsov, and I'm so happy because that dude is awesome.
And I got to even tell you this, even thinking about this, I think Vegas plays Nashville tomorrow night. If I'm not mistaken. It's tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm going to watch that. Will friggin' goddamn Nashville ever goddamn lose again? I can't believe they haven't come up with a banner yet for all the wins that they've had in a row.
It's going to happen.
I would think so.
We've had a 14-game point streak in the 2023-2024 season.
That's some real nonsense by the hockey gods to put Ryan O'Reilly on that goddamn team.
Would you rather have that team or Chicago?
And Donnie, what is Nashville's success go back to? It doesn't go back to the win over the Blues, even though you could say that started their success. It goes back to Barry Trotz saying, nope, you guys are not going to the U2 concert
at the Sphere. See, U2 isn't good for anybody.
Listen, that's not okay.
Anybody.
That's not okay, Dan and Shay. That's not okay.
Dan and Shay would have been great. They were actually in Nashville. They should have went and saw that. That would have turned their season around.
I just don't know why this had to turn into blaspheming U2 all of a
It's
sudden.
not blasphemy. I'm just pointing out the obvious, Donnie.
That is one of the greatest bands in the history of ever.
You go see U2, you lose. You don't see U2, you go on a hot streak.
Listen, in this particular instance, I have a lot of trouble arguing with you. I just have a tough time writing off U2, man. Also, and I'm just going to throw this at the tail end of this. This has nothing to do with anything. If you have not seen the South Park episode in a while with Randy and the bowel movement and Bono, it is without question one of the funniest 23 minutes that you will ever have. If you're having a bad day, pull it up on Max.
Just watch any episode of South Park. It just makes your day better. You might need it after today, Donnie, after JR and I got a hold of you.
Well, guys, so much for the glass half full. But you know what? It is what it is, guys. I mean, It does no sense in us sitting here and trying to glass half full this situation when it's clearly not.
You want me to glass half full this one for you? We talked about this on postgame. You have to be at least optimistic of the way that the team played down the stretch. Because 2 weeks ago, you were dead in the water after the Islanders, the Devils, and the Rangers. Like, you looked like a team that just didn't give an ish. Your president of hockey operations said that the joy was gone out of your team, and they could have just been done. But instead, they went on and won 6 of 7. They got points in 7 of 8, and they put themselves in this position. Last year when they were dead in the water, they were dead in the water until the final 2 months of the season when they got that spark. So if anything, at least be optimistic of how a lot of the players have played and put the team in the position that they're in right now.
2 words.
Taco Bell.
That sucked.
Oh, boy, that sounds great. I was going to say Jake Neighbors, but that sounds absolutely
Taco Bell,
delicious.
Chalupa.
I go 3 crunchy tacos and chips and cheese. And sometimes I get a little extra cup of cheese so that I can dip my tacos.
Do you get those little cinnamon twists?
Great appetizer.
Don't like the cinnamon twists.
Really?
Nah, man, I've never been a
They
cinnamon
do
twist
nothing,
guy.
right?
Like, not a thing.
Make a mess.
If I'm going to have something sweet, well, then I'll just have like a cookie or something, not this goddamn tortilla with a bunch of sugar on it. I don't friggin' want that.
You guys are crazy. This cinnamon mess. You just put the whole thing in your mouth, JR. No crumbs come out.
Yeah, but if it doesn't taste good, then that defeats the whole purpose.
It's just dough.
Hey, you guys can teach me a lot, but don't try to teach me how to eat.
That's true.
Don't try to
JR's
teach
got to
me.
be like, look, you amateurs, keep it to yourself.
All right. Well, I believe that we have to. Boy, there's a lot of suits here today.
Uh-oh.
That always makes me nervous. All
Good
right,
thing I wore my suit.
I think we got to wrap it up here. It is the Last Minute Blues podcast. Alex Ferrario, Jeremy Rutherford, for our dudes, Jamie Rivers, as well as Jeff Burton, who we miss so much. I'm Donnie Fandango. Thank you, as always, for listening. Let's go, Blues!
The Last Minute Blues Podcast. Hear more at 1057thepoint.com.